Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon. We're going to continue our two-hand whip series, and today we're continuing to work with two 4-foot Peter Jack bull whips. They're a match set, 12 plat, single color for those of you that are interested. Would I recommend that you start your two-whip journey with bull whips? No, but this is the only match set I was able to get my hands on. I do have two-hand dragon tails now, and I put out a video the last day or so on two-handed dragon tails, but for starting your journey I would recommend either signal whips or two-hand dragon tails. Peter Jack's in the process of making me a match set of 4-foot signals, and as soon as I get those, I'm going to take a hiatus from the bull whips and drop back down to single tails and work with those until I get my skill level up, and then I will of course come back to these bull whips. But in the meantime, this is all we've got. This is what we're going to work with. I'm going to show you some techniques I've been using for practice, and then some feedback I got from Moodstone throwing with her at the Woodshed Saturday as to why some of these are practice techniques that you wouldn't necessarily want to carry on into the dungeon. Okay, so one of the practice techniques is simply off the shoulder. Okay, and we can come off the shoulder alternating, throwing one whip, then throwing the other whip, one whip, and then the other whip. And honestly, that feels very comfortable for me. If I throw them both at the same time, that's equally comfortable. So you can do together timing, and you can do alternating timing. Okay, now I would call this more balanced timing. Okay, staggered timing would be somewhere in between together and alternating or balanced timing. So this is balanced timing. This is together timing. Staggered timing would be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And staggered timing with dynamic whips is much easier than when you're throwing static whips. You can see that's a little awkward on the recovery, but it is possible to do together, staggered, and balanced timing coming off the shoulder. So that's a good practice technique. If you do that technique in the dungeon, in play, then check in with your bottom and see how they like that. I can tell you Moodstone did not like that sensation. It was helping me, improving my skills, but it wasn't doing anything for her. So when you move to dynamic throwing, one technique that we've shown that you can do is just use a forehand. So you throw a forehand and alternate that with the other forehand. Okay, now the feedback I got from Moodstone on this technique was that doesn't feel any different if I do it with skill with both hands. You end up with the result of a forehand on one shoulder and a forehand on the other shoulder, and they're alternating. So that doesn't actually feel any different to the bottom than if I just threw one-handed in a forward figure 8. Okay, but for practice, throwing alternating forehands, I think is a good practice technique to work on. As we break down two-hand whip work, that is a good practice technique to work with. But if you do that in the dungeon, I would want to check with the bottom to see how they're liking that sensation. Another practice technique we've done is to throw one-handed forward figure 8 and alternate that with the other. Okay, again, that's not going to do anything for the bottom in the dungeon, but for you practicing, it's going to allow you to isolate and focus on one hand at a time. Okay, we don't have to worry about our dominant hand so much, but when it comes around to the non-dominant hand, we need a lot of mileage with that. In my instance, with this left hand, I need a lot of mileage with that. When I throw it one right after the other, I do much better than when I alternate it. So obviously, alternating it, you could see when I'm throwing it consistently with one hand, my pattern's pretty good. When I alternate it, I need practice. Okay. So then the other technique would be throwing it together, which is start with your non-dominant hand, get it started first, and get both whips going at once. I find together timing, together meaning the whips arrive at almost the same time. The advantage of throwing together is your hands are doing essentially the same thing. They're mirroring each other, so it's much easier for the non-dominant hand to behave itself. And you don't get them tangled that often, because when you're throwing snakes or bullwhips, they're moving close to the speed of sound, and they're not exactly reaching the same point at exactly the same time, just very close. So close the naked eye almost can't tell that they're not exactly together. So staggered timing or separated timing would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, where I give a little more space between when those hit. And I want them to hit 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now balance timing would be even a broader separation, and I am not there yet. But balance timing would be the goal. Not only to have balanced timing, but be able to throw balanced and have good control on the receiving end. And then when you can move from balanced to separated or staggered, whatever you want to call it, balanced to staggered to together, and then back again, and speed the whips up and slow them down. Obviously, this is a lot of skills that we're going to be working on, and it's going to take some time, but we're already getting much better. The feedback I got from Moodstone after throwing two-handed, and I've been throwing single-handed with her for probably about 14 years. She's been standing for me. Well, she loved two-handed. She honestly, in one time of throwing two-handed, liked it better than when I throw single-handed. And I've been throwing single-handed with her for 13 years, and I kind of feel like I'm pretty good single-handed. I've been told I'm pretty good single-handed. So two-handed, she encouraged me with two-handed to continue that journey and to continue to get better. And she's looking forward to more whip scenes two-handed. Of course, two-handed, the problem is finding a venue that will accommodate two-handed whip work, and getting my whip lane narrow enough that I can walk into a venue that really won't accommodate it, but I'm skilled enough that I can do it and pull it off. So those are all goals for us as we march together down this two-handed whip journey together. Hopefully, in the next week or two, I'll have my signals from Peter Jack, and we can do some signal whip work. As always, thanks for watching Whips in the Journey, or Whips in the Dungeon. On my other channel is The Leather Journey.